When one of your best lit sequences in the entire episode is the opening credits, that's not great.
I'm gonna do something I've never done before. I'm removing a sin off the jump. This joke about the opening credits being better lit than the actual episode is not only funny, but it's also true.
Giving your main characters the glory of being on the front line when we all know there isn't a chance in hell that any of them are dying in the initial onslaught. I'd have given back all the sins if fucking Sam was taken out by a stray arrow in the first few minutes. Then I'd have spent the episode caring about who was going to survive instead of fucking around with my contrast settings.
Why Sam? Sam doesn't actually matter in the overall plot anymore, so killing him off wouldn't affect anything. You're asking for a pointless death simply for the sake of seeing a death.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Took your time.
Attempting to conceal your late sin behind a you took your time greeting. Now you have 2 sins.
And why are either of those things sins? I am so confused.
And they've got a nice sized army here ready and willing to fight the dead, but it still makes no sense that the USS Enterprise isn't here to help the fight. Just in case I never get a chance to sin favor the bold from Season 6 of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, this seemed like as good a place as any to do it.
Discount Jeremy makes a pop culture reference that isn't a sin of the episode cliche.
I'm actually glad Wolfie the White is here. Finally gives me someone to root for. Not because I'm particularly attached to him, but because he's the only damn character I'm going to be able to see.
You're not emotionally attached to Ghost? What the hell? How? He's got more character than any of the humans in these later seasons.
I find it very strange that John isn't on the front line with his people like he was for the Battle of the Bastards, or basically every single time there's any fighting at all. I know he's the only other person that knows how to fly a dragon, but do they really need a pilot? Can Danny not just tell them to do what dragons do in the general direction of the bad guys?
Dragons are animals, and the show has made the point that they are difficult to control. With that being said, it's safe to assume that having John ride one instead of simply commanding it to do what they want is a more surefire way of keeping it in line.
I'm glad all the Dothraki heard Jorah. The back row could have very easily been a Dothraki kebab. Seems like Melisandre should have given at least a heads up as to what she was going to do.
You think that kooky priestesses think about shit like that? Nah, fam.
Also, why are the Dothraki the only ones that get the eternal flame advantage? If you're going to bring spells to class, Melisandre, you need to bring enough for everyone.
Not that it makes any sense, but the reason for this is that the Dothraki are the only force without dragonglass weapons.
So part of the battle plan was just to have Jorah and the Dothraki blindly charge the army of the dead? They had the likes of Daenerys, Jorah, Grey Worm, Sir Davos, Tyrion, Jon, and Jaime planning this shit, and this was the best they could come up with? This will be a long night indeed, but mostly for the audience.
I'm very glad he's sinning the dumbass battle strategy, so remove us in for that. But I'm not happy that this is the only time he talks about it and he barely even scratches the surface. There is so much more to sin, but you tapped out so early.
Okay, this is a pretty badass shot, and since I probably won't be able to see the rest of the episode well enough to remove any more sins, I guess we'll take it off here.
I simply cannot condone the removal of a sin during this god-awful episode.
Wouldn't it have been a good idea to launch these badass siege weapons before you send in your first wave of Dothraki to the slaughter? I can see waiting until you know the enemy's within range, but they fire them before the Dothraki even make contact, so what do they know now that they didn't know a few minutes ago?
You're yet again making a pretty decent point, but missing a further sin, which is the fact that they have their catapults and trebuchets in front of their infantry. This shit is not difficult to catch. You should be doing a way better job right now.
I mean, why should they show the battle between the Dothraki and the Storming Dead when we can just see everyone else's expression as they try to ascertain how the battle is going?
Not that it worked or was good in any way, but the point of not showing the battle was to heighten suspense for the audience.
Earlier somebody shouted, presumably to make sure they don't wipe out their own people. But since that battle's clearly done, why didn't they reload and start firing again? Also, why are these incredibly long-range siege weapons positioned on what has very quickly become the front line? Do they never get used again? Why wouldn't you use these again? If you, like us, had been waiting 8 years for this epic fight between the undead, the unsullied, the wildlings, and all the other assorted humans, well then here's a tip how to enjoy it best. Close all the curtains, f*** around with the brightness on your TV, and then take your remote, throw it through the damn screen in frustration, and then just imagine something better in your head.
Yep, I agree 100%. Take another sin back.
I don't know how to use it.
Sticking with the pointy end.
We got callbacks, y'all.
So you're not going to sin Sansa for saying she doesn't know how to use a fucking knife? You're just gonna let that one slide?
Friend saves friend in combat only to then get killed themselves immediately afterward. Cliché.
That's not a cliche, my guy. Try to actually find out what that word means.
Now, in fairness, I've never flown a dragon, but they're capable of flying straight up. Yes, I just feel like rising above the storm would be a better option than blindly flying around inside of it.
I think the implication here is that the dragon is confused by the storm and therefore doesn't know to fly above it, and Jon doesn't have enough control over it to make it do that.
What is this, a battlefield for ants?
Unfunny joke is unfunny.
If Melisandre can conjure up enough fire to fill up an entire trench, there are clearly some skills of hers they're not putting to use against the army of the dead ice people.
Like what? I mean, she's already used her powers to light the Dothraki swords and the trench. What more do you want from her?
At least we're already in a crypt.
I'm laughing, but holy shit, dude, there are children and terrified civilians down here. Then probably aren't as accepting of your dark humor as the audience at home is.
That fake-ass laugh. Also, pointless nitpicking is pointless.
The things I did.
Everything you did brought you where you are now. Home.
Never mind about betraying Robb, stealing Winterfell, killing Sir Roderick, abandoning Sansa, and his actual sister Yara. Oh, and those 2 kids he executed because he thought they were his adopted brothers.
Theon never thought those boys were Bran and Rickon. He knew full well that they weren't. He killed them to save face by telling everyone they were.
You've got the White Walkers stalled as the trench is burning. This might be a great time to start shooting arrows and killing as many as you can. Oh, just gonna wait until they form a plan to get past the burning trench? Great call.
Yet another good sin. Damn, this video is actually not horrible.
Also, the fire mode is pretty badass, but did no one see this tactic coming? I mean, this thing is, what, 10 feet wide? Dead overcame it in a matter of minutes. How was this ever a viable defense?
The plan was to catch some of the whites in the lit trench and stall the rest, which technically worked. Now, the way they end up not doing anything while the dead are stalled doesn't make sense, but the basis for the strategy is actually logical.
Of the World War Z Army of Darkness.
Discount Jeremy makes a pop culture reference that isn't a sin of the episode cliche.
Lord Beric here knows damn well that Clegane has a pretty severe aversion to flamey things, so perhaps beckoning him with a very sharp flamey thing isn't the best way of getting him back in the game.
You're failing to understand that Beric is full of adrenaline right now and therefore not thinking about shit like that.
Looks like Lady Mormont went to the Rickon Stark school of not getting the out of the way of a stampeding giant.
How the hell does that apply to Rickon? He's known for running in a straight line from Ramsay while being shot at. That had nothing to do with a giant.
Man, this is up even for Game of Thrones.
Did you miss the multiple baby murders in the earlier seasons? Or the several rape scenes? My point is, Discount Jeremy is full of shit.
And fortunately, this mindless giant will play with its food long enough and at eye level enough for Lady Mormont to stab it in the brain. Look, I know this is supposed to be an epic moment, but it's hard to get excited when it feels more staged than Éowyn facing down Sauron.
Éowyn never faced down Sauron, so I have no idea what the hell you're talking about.
I suppose now is as good a time as any to ask how exactly does the dragon breath work and how long does it last? I mean, the dead dragon seems to be able to sustain this indefinitely, so why would it stop before finishing the job? And why don't we see more of Daenerys and Jon lighting up the army of the dead now that they're committed to the Bran, he'll be fine plan? The point is, I don't know whether I'm supposed to be worried for the good guys facing this unstoppable force or pissed off at them for not using their own.
Presumably, the dragons can breathe fire for as long as they can sustain the effort, which is why they would need to stop sometimes. I agree with you that Jon and Dany should be lighting up the entire army, cause, to be honest, they could have wiped out a solid half of the enemy by now, but the rest of the sin was dumb.
So they have super hearing sensitive enough to hear a drop of blood across the room? Since when was that a f***ing thing?
Since now, when it's being introduced. This is an example of the show establishing something new for one of its fictional species.
Fucking hell, Arya! Does she just walk around corners with her blade up at all times? What if that had been Theon or Jorah?
She is currently in an active war zone. Having her blade ready for a quick kill actually makes sense.
The YouTube gods forbid us from playing the music, but the opening chords of this part of the score sound straight up like the opening of NSYNC's Bye Bye Bye. And it ain't no lie that I'd give back all the sins if we got a battle montage with these sweet, sweet vocal tones of one Mr. Justin Timberlake and one Mr. JC Chazé backing it up.
Discount Jeremy makes a pop culture reference that isn't a sin of the episode cliche.
Jorah translates Drogon's roar perfectly into, "Hey, Daenerys is gonna be in some big trouble. We need you to ex machina or some shit. Meet us there in Tan."
First, he slurred his pronunciation when he said the phrase some shit, and since I've already removed so many sins, I feel like I'm being more than fair in adding one for that small mistake. And second, you still need to look up what the term Deus Ex Machina means, cause you're still using it incorrectly.
Dracarys.
Cool, but weren't Jon and Daenerys armed with any dragon glass? The one thing known to be effective against the White Walkers?
What do you mean the one thing? Fire is also known to be effective.
Earlier, Tyrion protested that his brain was being wasted down here, yet neither he nor anybody else seemed to note the inherent flaw in hiding in a crypt filled with dead bodies while being invaded by a creature whose ability to raise the dead features pretty prominently on their resume.
Yup, take another sin back. You've earned it.
Dragon Ex Machina. But to be fair, there should have been a hell of a lot more of these throughout the episode.
Discount Jeremy sins something he likes cliche. Also, another misuse of the term Deus Ex Machina.
I realize the fire is blue so we know it's the Night King's dragon, but that doesn't make blue dragon flames any less of a sin.
What the hell? Why are blue dragon flames a sin? Care to explain?
I'm honestly not sure if they're about to fight or and I'm also not sure which I'd rather see.
Discount Jeremy wants to see some Theon dick, which is super ironic considering the... well, let's just call it a complication.
Okay, that was fucking cool.
No, you've gotta be kidding me. I was starting to think that this video was actually pretty decent until he removed a sin for Arya killing the Night King. How is that even possible to praise? This shit deserves infinite sins.
Can't see fucking shit out of this thing.
What the hell? Why are blue dragon flames a sin?